listening to the Blue Jay Breakdown.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Blue Jay Breakdown, where we talk all things Creighton basketball. Mike Sautter, Jacob Padilla here with me. Hey, they lost a game in Kansas City to a really good team. Colorado State's pretty good, but they also won 2 games. It's the last time we talked about this. So where do you want to start? Let's just touch on Texas Southern real quick, and then we move on.
82-50 win in there in that game. School record 43-point attempts. We're not shooting well, and then they got hot, hit a bunch in a row, scored 20 straight, and that was ball game. And I think it's important to touch on that because of what Coach Mack talked about afterward in terms of shot selection and 43-point attempts on a night when they weren't necessarily falling, but they liked the process, and he liked most of those shots. He didn't think they rushed very many. And that's what this team is. They're going to shoot a lot of threes because they've got a lot of good shooters. So that's kind of the most notable thing there. Although Trey Alexander continued his hot start to the season, another 20-point game, 8 assists and 7 rebounds. And Baylor Shireman also 23 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. So 2 guys kind of flirting with a triple-double. One game after Alexander came one assist shy there. Yeah. So you got a couple guys there that have triple-double potential, which is pretty nice to have. But
I feel like Kalkbrenner is another guy that has it too. Just maybe he could get, I don't know, 10 blocks can be a little hard.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will
really
challenge him enough for him to get 10 blocks. And he's not a guy that hunts blocks. That's the difference between like a rim protector and a shot blocker.
He's just there.
He's not necessarily going and chasing blocks. He's just getting in the way and making you miss. Sometimes he'll block it. Sometimes he'll just force a wild shot. He's a little bit more disciplined than that. So be tough to get there, but he had 16, 10 and 4 blocks in that game. So still pretty darn good. But that transitioned over to the Kansas City trip, the Hall of Fame Classic that you and I both made it down for at T-Mobile Center down there.
First time for me being there. It's great. I think the facility is awesome.
Yeah. Second year in a row that I've been down there. It is a pretty nice place. Took care of us pretty well. Don't love the end zone seating, but it's closer to the court than at Creighton. So, but yeah, so go down there. It's not quite the like the Maui that Creighton was in last year. But
definitely not.
Yeah, but they did run into a good team. Faced Loyola in the first round and talked about the 43-point attempts. We're going to let it fly. Well, against Loyola Chicago, they shot 14 of 27 from 3. 55% overall.
That'll do. Yeah, every single time.
They're up 8 at halftime, stretched it out, but and won the second half by 15 to win that thing pretty handily. Even and I mean Alexander, that was kind of for the first time he struggled. And again, 20 points and a poster dunk in each of the first 4 games. Finished with 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting, 1 assist, 5 turnovers. It felt like he got blocked at the rim like 5 times. He just did not have much burst. He didn't look like himself.
I wonder if, Mason Miller was out, the illness thing, maybe he's playing through something.
Yeah. And asked Mac about that. He said, he got some guys dealing with anything, but didn't offer any kind of specifics besides Miller being gone. But it did imply that, maybe it wasn't just one sick guy. They might've been dealing with some things as a team. And it definitely looked like it the way they played. Cause like Alexander, from what he had been the first 4 games to what he was down in Kansas City, just not the same player. But in the first game, the nice thing about the way the Creighton team is constructed is Alexander had an off game, so Shireman and Kalkbrenner picked him up. Kalkbrenner, 29 points, 4 of 8 from 3, hit all 5 of his free throws too. And talked to Coach Valentine after, and he said, "Hey, he wants to take 8 threes. We're going to go ahead."
Yeah, I'd probably let someone do that too if it was him.
But also Baylor said, hey, he makes 4 for 8. He needs to take 8 threes. So like that's, I think most teams, and this is kind of a theme for this, the start of the season and will continue throughout. Kalkbrenner is the key. As many shooters as Creighton has, as good as Baylor and Trey have been, every team comes in trying to take away the easy buckets for Kalkbrenner. And then everything kind of flows out of that. And this is a game where, they still, 8 of his 19 shot attempts were from 3. It wasn't necessarily like he's just dominating on the block.
In the middle, yeah.
It's, but still finished 29 there. And Sharman had 24 points, 12 boards, 3 assists, I think, 5 of 8 from 3 himself, 8 of 12 from the field. So you had 2 guys that were able to pick it up, and they're able to get out of that game despite Alexander's struggles. Was not the case for the championship game against, like you said, a good Colorado State team, where literally every single player on the team had an off game at the exact same time.
It was not great.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to say it. Like, it just wasn't
27.9% from the field, 20.7% from 3. Heck, 61.5% from the free throw line. Like they were missing layups.
Yeah, they were definitely missing layups.
Yeah, that was the stat broadcast is in 7 of 16 on layups. Like Baylor and Trey both had contested bunnies that just didn't go in. That's kind of where you're like, all right, this isn't happening today. Yes, obviously they're not shooting the 3 ball well, but it wasn't like they took 43s and that was all they were getting. They were getting to the rim. They were getting some post touches. They just weren't making them. And they just couldn't make a shot from anywhere on the court. And credit to Colorado State, who executed their game plan really well. They did a great job of being in the gaps.
Yep.
And so there weren't a lot of driving lanes for Trey, for Baylor, the guys that have normally gotten into the paint and created things that way. And they did so without giving up the easy kick out, catch and shoot threes. They're really active in that regard. Also, Creighton just wasn't sharp.
Yeah.
The energy, the communication defensively. They held them to 69 points, which is they've scored 80 plus in every game before this one. But I know Mac talked about just kind of some switches. There was no communication. Yeah, and it was your best players too. It was Trey, it was Baylor, it was Kalkbrenner that had mental lapses.
Just wasn't there. There was one play in particular in the second half where Creighton was trying to make a run and it just ended the game basically. Isaiah Stevens was wide open from 3, wide open. Yep. And he's their best player. So probably not, ideal. And he cashed it and it was basically over.
Yeah. And Stevens was the story of the game for Colorado State. And he's the exact kind of point guard that is equipped to attack Creighton's defense and that drop defense with his combination of ability to hit the pull-up jumper, off balance, get to his spots, and then also to make the perfect reads to put pressure, to draw in Kalkbrenner as a help and dump it off at the last second. He was just in control that entire game. Really good player there. So you're not going to run into many teams that have a point guard as good and as good as exploiting the drop defense as Creighton was, or as Stevens was. In the second half, they shot over 50% from the field. Yeah. So Creighton tried. There was a brief stretch there where it's like, okay,
they were coming back.
Scored on 4 straight possessions. It's like, okay. And I think Colorado State got 3 buckets during that stretch to keep the lead. They got no closer than 9. And Stevens, I think, had 2 of those and an assist or something like that. So it was, I don't know, I think kind of the talking point coming out of that is, all right, people, the fears about this team that people had about the lack of athleticism, ability to get to the rim, all those sorts of things.
Missing Nembhard and get in that game, he could have got to the rim, maybe got fouled, hit some shots, maybe change some things for them. Yes, but that's not how this team is constructed. He's no longer here. It's time to move on.
Yeah, and and I think with the way they played, he wouldn't have made a difference as a team. Just everybody, there was just something off that game. They were just never going to win that game, and that's why, going back and watching, they missed a lot of really good looks. I went back and watched the game closely, charted and everything.
Baylor missed 2. We're talking 2 wide open
at the
rim.
Yeah,
and he got his own rebound and missed it again. Stuff like that just isn't going to happen.
And the threes they took, again, most of them are really good looks. They made a lot of the right reads based on what the defense was showing them. It wasn't like they were forcing stuff up out of control. They weren't getting any good looks. They just couldn't make anything, and that will happen occasionally, even with really good teams. The disappointing part was the grittiness, the fight, the doing the little things that wasn't there also. And I think the shot making or lack thereof impacted them. And Kalkbrenner even talked about that, right? Yeah. This kind of, as it went on, it kind of got in their heads a little bit more. Yeah. And last year we saw that where there was a lot of that grittiness where second half of the season, even when they weren't shooting well, they found ways to win games.
Right.
And
on Thursday, the Colorado State game, frankly, the tougher team won.
Yeah.
Like that day, right? Colorado State was tougher that day. They were. I mean, they just were. And that's a really good team. It's probably one of the best mid-majors in the country. So if they're not the best,
they're the best. They're the best
sure.
team Creighton has played thus far, for sure. They probably the second best team they'll play in the non-conference. Alabama, maybe it would be the other one. Nebraska coming up is so far been comparable to Iowa, who Creighton's already seen. And those are Bama, Colorado State, Creighton, and Iowa are probably the toughest non-conference opponents.
Nebraska is pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Nebraska. But one thing of note, you just look at the season statistics right now. Creighton is shooting 38, almost 39%. If you round up, it's 38.7 from three. That's right about the mark.
It's the 28th in the country.
Yeah, you need to be right there. 35 to 42 as a team, you're feeling pretty good. Actually, probably more like 37 to 42 as a team.
And they were 40 plus before this last game. So they've they're third highest in the country in 3-point rate, number of shots that are from three.
That's not going to change.
No, that's not going to change.
Might go up.
I think they were one or two. And they're 8th in the country in 2-point percentage, and that's a lot of that's
scored 84 points a game, even though they didn't score at all. 48 against Colorado State. So it's not like sky's not falling. It's one game.
Yeah,
but there's a lot to take away from it. Like, okay, here's maybe is there deficiencies here, or is it just the one game?
Yeah. So like I was saying, the takeaway isn't from, Creighton's just not athletic enough. They can't ever get to the rim. Like, that's not my takeaway from this game. If we see multiple games of it, then I'll start to worry. This was a game where I think just shots didn't fall. It's the other stuff, like the gradient, how they handle the shots not falling.
Right.
That's kind of the concerning thing, even more so than like just getting to the rim and all that type of stuff. So we'll see kind of how they bounce back from that, how they handle that the next time it happens, if they learn from this. And Trey Alexander, 1-16 against a good team. Creighton is never going to win that. He's that important to this team. That's just the way this team is constructed. And that's really a lot of what it came down to, was for whatever reason, just Alexander was not himself down in Kansas City.
That's why I think I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I don't know for a fact. I'm kind of trying to read between the lines here. Why did he not play well? Maybe he was dealing with something.
Yeah. So it is worth highlighting, though, now with Alexander's struggles down in Kansas City, Baylor Shireman leading the team, 18 points a game, shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three, almost 90 from the line, 7 boards, 4 assists a game. He has been fantastic.
He has been really good.
And he struggled in that Colorado State game, but he was the guy that you could see was at least fighting. Like, he was the one, didn't finish him all the time, but he was still trying to battle down there, get inside, make some plays. He's the one that kind of got that little mini run started there, knocked down a big three. Like, he's been fantastic this season.
He's at 40% on 50 3-point shots. So that'll work.
Yeah.
that's going to be pretty good.
And I think Stephen Ashworth has been a popular topic of discussion. I think a lot of it is, he's the new guy. He's obviously replacing Nemhart, who has been, who was a really good player for them for 2 years, helped them accomplish a lot. I think people are probably, I don't know that they're looking at it the right way in terms of expectations. The reality is that Trey Alexander is this team's primary playmaker. Correct. He's not the point guard per se in terms of out listed on the roster, however you look about it. Ashworth is a floor spacer. He's there to create space for Alexander, for Kalkbrenner, for Baylor to go to work. And he's there to organize things, get guys in spots. And I saw even in that Colorado State game, there were possessions where he did a good job of getting in the lane, making the next play, moving the ball, was getting a little bit of penetration, even if he wasn't getting all the way to the rim. Like, he did some good things. Like, he didn't play poorly necessarily, like in terms of like, oh, this was our problem. That wasn't necessarily the case.
No.
I think he's still kind of figuring it out. He is shooting 41% from three on almost 5 attempts a game.
Yeah.
Like, even it feels like he's played poorly, he's still, that's what they brought him here to do.
One key stat about him. his first free throw in a Creighton jersey was against Colorado State, and he was 2 for 2.
Yeah.
He's 2 for 2 on the year.
Yep.
That's incredible. Like, he hasn't been in the free throw line yet, except for the 2 free throws against Colorado in the second half against Colorado State. So that is something. He'll be fine. He's mature enough to handle the pressure and everything like that. I don't see that being an issue, and he's just a different player.
Yeah.
Just people are gonna have to get over it, right?
Yep. So I think anything else? Obviously, we've got.
Now let's look ahead, I guess. So Creighton played a tough week, right?
Yep.
2 road games.
Yeah, they got Colorado State before that big one on Sunday against Nebraska. Oklahoma State. You said
not
Colorado
good.
State.
So
Moving on.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what?
Moving on. Next one.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, and then on Thursday, and then at Nebraska on Friday. 2 kind of tougher-ish games on the road, different places to play, different feel, I guess, on it. So Oklahoma State, let's look at them.
First true road game.
Yeah, first real road game.
It was the Kansas City was a home game.
Yeah,
wasn't
Smaller
SHI, but
it was
95%, 90% of the fans weren't.
Oh, I would say maybe more than
that. It was essentially a home crowd there for that. Oklahoma State. Right now. Yeah. It's going to be a little different, but Oklahoma State, they are not a good team. They are 3-3, and they've got losses to Abilene Christian, St. Bonaventure, and a bad Notre Dame team in overtime.
Notre Dame's not great.
Their wins are Sam Houston State, New Orleans, and Houston Christian,
which isn't great.
Yeah. So this is a game that this needs to be a bounce back game. Creighton looks good. Take care of business. It is nice to kind of get your first road game experience against a team like this where you're clearly the favorite still. Opportunity to bounce back. That's really that's what this is. This isn't a game that Creighton should particularly struggle with.
Yeah, you would think that they would be fine. So let's move on. Do you want to talk about Nebraska now or later?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just get to that. Interesting stat that I just stumbled across. So before that Colorado State game, last I looked, Creighton was number 2 in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency.
Oh, wow.
So that one game was enough to drop them down to 20th. Nebraska, want to guess where they are?
20th.
21st.
Yeah, right around 20th.
So they literally their offensive efficiency have been essentially equal because of that one game. But still, that's crazy. That Nebraska being a top 25 offense, that's kind of crazy to think about and what you've seen the last 4 years.
Here's something looking at this game. So you and I have been to I've been to all but one of both of these teams' games, I think, right? Is that correct?
Something like that.
Yeah. I think it's going to be pretty close.
KenPom has Creighton as a 1-point favorite.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really close. I do. For 2 reasons. One, it's in Lincoln. The crowd, it's sold out. Obviously.
There's going to be as much hype for coming off the win last year, the success early this season. Football being over with, and teams.
This week, we're in the middle of the week ahead of it. As this moves on this week, as it gets closer, it'll just ramp up, and I think it'll be. I mean, it's going to be. Rink Mass has been their best player. Can he do that against Kalkbrenner?
Yeah, there's some interesting matchups in this game. We'll see Rink versus Kalkbrenner and Rink versus the drop.
Yeah,
the 3-point shot has been kind of there or not. He's either shot really well or he's missed everything. It hasn't really been in between.
35%,
35%,
which is right at. He's still going to take them.
And Fullerton, he got some good looks and knocked him down against that drop. That might be there for him.
Right.
It's going to be tough for him to go inside. We've seen some of the Walker.
If they changed him up, if they, they step out a little farther, but then you don't want to take Kalkbrenner away.
Yeah. So
or do they match up? Do they put like a Trout on him?
Yeah, that's that actually.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, with the
stay with him in the perimeter.
Yeah, 100%. You could see them putting Kalkbrenner on Alec to start.
Yeah, because Alec isn't the offensive threat, particularly.
Yeah, he'll take a 3, but he'll take very, very wide open ones versus. So that'll be interesting.
I mean, he is 40% from 3, but he hasn't shot that many. So I look at that like.
So how they attack the drop will be really
Yes.
interesting. Bryce Williams against Baylor Shireman.
That'll be
a fun matchup.
Because Bryce, both of them are scorers, and Bryce can guard a little bit. Like, so that'll
Both
be
6'7" wings.
Yeah, they're very similarly built, I guess. And the point guard,
Lawrence on Trey.
Yeah,
that's going to be
Lawrence
a
is going to
huge
have
key.
to play Trey.
Yeah.
And Tominaga and Ashworth will probably match up. Jamarcus Lawrence has played really well. He hasn't scored a ton,
and that's
what they need him to do to be the initiator of the offense. He hasn't had a turnover in 3 straight games. He also is averaging 2.3 assist to turnover ratio, which anything over 2 is pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Like, he's played well. He's done what has been asked.
So the question is, how do they defend Trey when he sits down?
Yeah. Like, does Sam Hoiberg come in and be, because he's been kind of the defensive hound.
That will probably be the matchup. So that I think that'll be the key. Is like, again, we saw what happens when Alexander's struggling. If Creighton can slow him down, continue whatever happened down in Kansas City, Nebraska then have a chance.
And when Jerron Coleman gets in the game, who does he guard? Because that matchup he's not
probably Farabello if you can get away with that.
Great defender, like
so.
So the matchup is very interesting, super intriguing.
Yeah,
it's can Nebraska or can Creighton get back on the winning track in Stillwater and give themselves some nice momentum going into it? I look at a couple of things. Just from personnel, the toughness factor that Colorado State had, Nebraska's bigger, like a little bigger version of that. I'm not saying they're as good as Colorado State. What I'm saying is they're a bigger, bigger physical team. They like to play defense that way.
Well, especially because Colorado State, their best big guy, hurt his back a few possessions in
right away.
Didn't play the entire game.
Didn't help. So those are some of the CJ Wilcher, like what do you get from him? Like we're at.
And be a lot of threes in this game. Both teams top 20 in 3-point rate.
There's going to be a lot of threes. Again, a ton of people. It'll be fun. I don't really necessarily care who wins, but or loses the game, but it'll be fun.
Yep.
I think the environment's going to be amazing.
So so good. First real road week for Creighton.
Yeah.
We will be back next week to discuss what happened here before a difficult stretch. Creighton will have some time off after Sunday. They don't play again until next Saturday in Central Michigan.
I feel like they need a little after Sunday. They need that week. Nebraska's in the middle of their week off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we will be back next week to break it all down here on Blue Jay Breakdown.